Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in the video description. Thank you.
Questions of Doom.
Hello and welcome back to another Questions of Doom. In this series, as ever, I attempt to answer questions that you send my way using the archaeosoup@gmail.com email address, as displayed on the YouTube channel homepage, but as you'll also find at the end of this video. In answering these questions by video, it is my fond hope that the answer is not only useful to the person who's asked the question, but also anyone else out there who may be wondering the same thing. And I know for a fact that there are other people out there wondering the same thing as today's question of doom, because I was one of those people when I was a first-year archaeology student many years ago. So it is my pleasure today to answer a question that goes as follows. Dear Archaeosoup, I have just become an undergraduate of archaeology and already am feeling nervous towards the dissertation in the third year. I have a question. How do you approach choosing the dissertation topic? Are you required to produce a research question? I found several theses, presumably in the library, which focused on the diet and agricultural practices of several regions in Britain and Scandinavia. But I don't know where or how they were able to come across these cultures. How did they introduce new research themselves as undergraduates? I know that I'm only in the first year and I should begin to focus on this in the second year, but I'd like to start to think about it now. Kind regards, Jane. Jane, I hear you and I empathise with you, and I absolutely think that we are probably kindred academic spirits, because I was in precisely this situation when I was in my first year at uni. Now the thing is, this is the beginning of your first year. We're in the beginning of October, so we're in a minority, but it's an intense minority, and I completely understand where you're coming from. The thing is, I was probably worse than you. I was just freaking out in my first year at uni. I had this sense in the first couple of months that I needed to be able to read everything in the library that was linked with archaeology. And because I thought that might not be possible, it's not possible, but I thought it might not be, so I started to freak out even more. I needed to have a sense of what my dissertation topic might be, and I was concerned about this, so I was talking to professors and doctors and my academic supervisor, who I was assigned in the first year and who slowly sort of releases the reins a little bit as you go through your degree, but basically someone who's there for you. And I was sort of saying to them, look, I don't know if I could do this, I'm going to get it wrong. And I thought if I got the first year wrong, I'd get the second year wrong, then the third year wrong, and it all had to be mapped out now, otherwise it wasn't going to happen properly at all. I was freaking out. Now if you compare and contrast that with some of my friends and colleagues who were also studying archaeology in my year, they were much more relaxed. They were embracing the fact that it was the first year, that all they had to do was get a passing mark in the first year, and they could really start working in the second year and the third year, and that it would all kind of work out and it would be fine. But I knew I couldn't be like them. I had to have a bit more of a grasp of things now in order to have any hope of being able to enjoy or just get through my degree without actually having a complete nervous breakdown. So I was probably worse than you, but I understand the compulsion. With that in mind, my first piece of advice to you is to relax. Now don't turn off the video, because I understand I could not relax about this then. I simply couldn't. And having someone tell me to relax, having these people, these seasoned veterans of archaeology, tell me it'll be fine, just chill, please, don't freak out, just relax. It didn't help. I needed to do something, and I understand that, I really do. So my second piece of advice is follow your nose. Don't worry about actually forming a research question yet. You know, as did I, that 2 years is a surprisingly short amount of time, and before you know it, you'll probably be wanting to start writing your dissertation. And in that sense, being a bit more prepared than others in your cohort, in your year, may well be a good thing, because there were people who did relax in the first year who were freaking out in the third year. Then again, I also freaked out in the third year, but that's a whole other reason. So so yeah, being prepared is no bad thing, but I would say follow your nose now. Start by doing what is requested of you. Do the modules, do the reading, do the essays, and in this sort of introductory year where you'll be given an opportunity to introduce yourself to various times, places, cultures, artifacts and ideas and concepts and anthropological philosophies that you've never come across. Use this time to see what interests you. For example, I knew quite early on that Romans didn't really interest me, certainly not as a research topic. I'd seen and heard far too much about Romans growing up. Everywhere you went there were Romans, it seemed, and Romans just didn't interest me. I still obviously had to do the basics. I had to do the research and do the essays that were required of me on that topic, but I knew that wouldn't be my dissertation topic. So in that sense, follow your nose and something will start to crystallize. You'll start to understand roughly what direction you want to go in. For me, that was theory. My dissertation topic was on the theoretical applications of the philosophy of the self and embodied existence as it applies to archaeological research into how people might have lived in the past. So it was quite a big idea, it was quite a theoretical concept, but I knew that I wasn't necessarily interested in studying a place or a time, but rather archaeological theory, and that came out of following my nose in the first and second year. Now, this will lead you to some of these new cultures and ideas and places that you hint at in your question. It may well seem at the moment as though there are whole worlds out there that somehow someone else has discovered and that you're not aware of. For example, Urtabola is a whole Mesolithic culture, a whole Mesolithic world in Britain and Scandinavia prior to the Neolithic that I had no idea about before I really started my degree, but I came to love that Mesolithic culture, and that knowledge comes with the first step, by following your nose, following what interests you and going down those rabbit holes. So of course you don't know everything yet. I didn't know everything yet either in my first year, and I still don't know everything. That's, you know, a key point. You will never know everything, and it's a key Socratean point. Socrates himself said a wise man knows that what he doesn't know. He knows precisely the breadth and depth and vastness of the things that he will never know. So embrace that. Don't worry about where other people got their ideas from, or got their knowledge from, or their research data from. Don't worry about that. Just keep on plodding along day by day. Do the work, and you'll come across things that interest you. Now, there are some people, I'm not going to tell a lie here, there are some people who are extremely lucky, and they do have access to a particular pocket of land or particular artifacts that no one else has access to. People perhaps whose daddy owns a huge part of Northumberland, for example, or people who have a private family museum collection at home. People who maybe have resources and access that you don't. But those people will be few and far between, and also frankly what they have access to will always require more to give it context and purpose and meaning. So even if they have some secret hived off little plot of land that no one else can actually see, they're going to have to be following their nose as well to actually give that this notion that they've come into their degree with. Or I'm going to study the farm outside, I'm going to study the field just over the hill there. Yes, that's my dissertation. There are people like that, but they're going to have to do research as well. So don't worry that you don't know everything, and don't freak out if someone else seems to have something really solid in mind, because they're going to have to learn more to add to their solid idea anyway. So that's how you get there. That's how you get to the point of actually doing your dissertation, is hopefully by, first of all, trying to relax a little bit. Secondly, follow your nose. See what interests you. Out of all these new ideas, concepts, places, philosophies, artifacts, peoples, cultures, languages, see what sticks. See what crystallizes before you as a topic that you might want to pursue. And finally, do not compare yourself to anyone else. Don't try and understand what they know that you don't know. Don't believe them if they're putting out a fully fledged, varnished veneer of absolute confidence, because they're probably freaking out below the surface themselves. And also, this is not a race. Even if someone does happen to know something you don't know, and frankly, there are lots of people who know things you don't know, me, myself included. Lots of people who know things I don't know. That doesn't matter. You're not racing against that person. This is your own trajectory through your degree. So don't do that. Don't waste your time on those sorts of comparisons, or wondering how someone found out that piece of information. Maybe ask them if you really need to know, or look at if you're reading other people's theses and dissertations, look at their references and maybe follow some of those references if you're curious. But that comes back to this notion of follow your nose. So it's all about focusing on what you're interested in. But as far as actually the research question goes, you were curious about how you come to choose the topic, or whether you have to develop your own research agenda. It typically happens like this. In your second year, or towards the end of your second year, you'll be presented with a whole host of different potential dissertation questions. Within the department, readers, researchers, professors, doctors, the members of staff will have various questions that they suggest to the student body. And this is really helpful, because most people are not like me and you. Most people don't really know necessarily what they want to do for their dissertation, but also they're not even thinking about it until they absolutely have to. So it's helpful to have a series, a tree, a bushel of potential questions that they can pick, have a look at, consider, maybe pick another one, compare the two, maybe nibble from one, nibble from another. It's a process which starts with a whole host of fairly typical, simple dissertation questions, which are then honed and added to or changed through conversations with the relevant members of staff. So you could go down that route, and that's a completely legitimate route to go down. For example, a friend of mine knew he was really interested in the Neolithic of the Balkans, and there was a member of staff in our department who was a wonderful specialist in that area, and together they took a question that had been presented by this professor, and they whittled it down to focus on chairs and furniture in the Neolithic in the Balkans, and what this furniture implied, and I think it tied in also with models of furniture, so real furniture and clay artifacts that looked like chairs, and this kind of thing. The differentiation within society of someone who could sit on a chair and someone who was sitting on the floor in the Neolithic, this kind of thing. So that's a completely legitimate way of doing a dissertation, and I think most people do that. Most people do that, and that's wonderful. But I'm not most people. And I was one of those people, and I suspect you may be one of these people, who felt that I really wanted to make my own way in the world and in a dissertation topic. So I came up with my own research agenda, and you don't have to do this, but I did. My research agenda involved a whole host of additional research. I needed to go away and learn more about philosophy. I had to get basically up to second year standard in philosophy, in ideas about the embodied existence, psychology. I had to have conversations with psychology professors and textbooks and all sorts of stuff, just to be able to do my dissertation question, and other aspects of the sociology of living in houses. So some modern research as well in terms of modern groups and peoples. I bundled together a big topic, a big idea that really was a PhD. It's a PhD, and somehow I managed to do it in 1 year, in my 3rd year at university. And frankly, actually, I actually did it in about 6 months, because I spent half of my 3rd year freaking out. So it's not the best way to proceed, but I understand if you feel compelled to create your own research topic out of thin air, and it is completely doable. But again, this all comes back to, you need to try and relax. I wish I could go back in time and just calm myself down a little bit, because that 3rd year would have been so much more straightforward, and I would have had more time to actually construct some of this stuff. I would have given myself more thinking, more breathing space, had I relaxed a little bit. But you can do that. You can construct your own research topic, but you don't have to. And I would strongly recommend that you consider not doing that. Because this brings me to the pros and cons, you see. The pros and cons of doing this sort of stuff is that the pro, or the positive of creating your own research agenda, is that it immediately piques the interest of people who are reading it. People want to know, well, what's this person got to say? What's this new fresh voice? Oh, they sort of get very quivery and excited as academics. But it also means that it's really hard actually to have conversations with your peers and with the support staff, with your lecturers and your professors, because none of them are doing this topic. None of them are doing precisely this particular thing that you've chosen, especially if it's not linked with a place or a time. In my case, it was mainly theoretical, and so I felt very alone, and it led to an approach that felt very lonely, and wasn't necessarily the best for me at that time. The dissertation that I did very well. It ended up getting, a mark in the 80s or 90s. I can't quite remember, but it was a high mark. But I sometimes wonder whether or not it was actually worth all of that stress, when I could have got a similar mark had I done a more conventional dissertation question. Because so that's the con, that's the negative of that. Because the positive of doing a more conventional research question is that you do have the support of the member of staff who's helped you to construct that question. And also, crucially, if you want to go on to do a master's or a PhD with those people, or in that particular field, they can help you. They can help you to direct your dissertation towards that, and also to do additional research in preparation for the next step, and everyone knows where you're coming from and what it is that you're focusing on. They're not having to do lots of catch-up just to get to the point of understanding where you're starting from. They can actually see and help you to see the path that is before you. That's the positive of that. But the negative is it's not as original, and it won't be as immediately interesting to people necessarily as a purely self-created research topic agenda. Now, if I had known a bit more, I would have probably, in my case, done a conventional research dissertation question with a little bit of my interests tacked on, and then I would have moved to Newcastle University to do a master's with a chap called Chris Fowler, a very, very good archaeologist who really is interested in some of the ideas that I'm interested in. That's what I would have done. So a little bit more awareness, a little bit more time, a little bit more kindness to myself, and that's where I would have gone. But as it was, I don't really regret what I did, in so much as I worked intensively. I got a great mark on that dissertation and in my degree, and for various other reasons, I won't go into those necessarily today, but for personal reasons linked with family, I wasn't necessarily able just to dive straight into a master's anyway. So all this stuff is, I suppose, as a final note, all of this stuff is deeply personal. It's all about what you need, what you want, and what you can sustain, and whether or not you want to sustain that in a way that helps you to have a social life, for example, or that helps you to have a robust mental health, or so on and so forth. An awful lot to consider, an awful lot to think about. But ultimately, all of this comes back to those first key concepts that I laid out at the beginning of this video. And I really wish I'd been able to act on this when I was in my first year at uni. I would have been much less stressed, much happier in myself, and I think much more able to think clearly as well, if I had just, first of all, tried to relax, tried to find that headspace, that social space, that physical space, to allow myself to be and to think clearly. Because that's crucial if you want to do the next bit right, and that is indulge in the first and second year. Enjoy and explore all these different new concepts, places, peoples, ideas, artifacts, languages, writing systems, pottery types, bone samples, teeth, lab research, mass spectrometers. All this stuff that you're going to be introduced to is going to be fascinating, and hopefully if you can explore that properly, you'll start to learn what you do and what you don't like, what you're interested in, and therefore eventually what your dissertation topic is likely to be. And finally, with that dissertation topic in mind, however you get there, whether you get that question from a professor and you together you hone it down, you sculpt and whittle it into something that you want to study, or whether you come up with an idea that's original and that you really want to do, you really want to follow your star from the get-go, that's fine. But whatever you do, do not compare yourself to other people. Don't worry about what they do and don't know. Don't freak out about whether or not they've got the book that you don't have, or they have some knowledge that you have not yet got for yourself, or whether or not they seem to be more confident than you. Do not do it. It's a waste of time, and those people, in my experience, are acting. They are presenting for the world. They're not actually as confident as they seem to be. And crucially, actually, often they don't end up being archaeologists. They often go into something else, like politics or a law firm or something. So just focus on yourself and try to give yourself a bit of space. Be kind to yourself. That's basically what I'm getting at. Hopefully this video has been useful and or interesting at the very least in answering this question, and hopefully, Jane, you are able to take some of this advice, because I know it's hard. Again, I get it. Someone telling me to relax in my first year. Are you ridiculous? Don't be ridiculous. This is the first of 3 years. I need to focus. But hopefully you're able just to listen to some of this, and hopefully some of it rings true for you. But also as well, if there's anyone else out there who has any comments or suggestions or wisdom from their experience that they want to share below, please do. This is hopefully a video that will be useful to more and more people, actually, and in so much as I think there are lots of people out there who come into the university and suddenly are confronted with these notions and get very, very intimidated. So please do share wisdom below in the comments. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.